If a 5-year-old you've never met hums your mother's lullaby one, she made up in a cramped Ohio apartment and never recorded, what do you do? I'm Hannah Reed, Christ SPR at Bayview Children's in San Francisco. Tonight's a black tie NICU gala, chandeliers, tech billionaires, a miracle incubator on stage. I'm supposed to keep donors smiling and cameras pointed the right way. But behind a white curtain off the neonatal unit, a little boy with a plastic wristband that reads MS001 just sang my childhood to me. A Helixin biotech aide says he's an orphan enrolled in a study. The board chair of Helixin, Eleanor Hale, calls him a research subject. In 30 minutes, we'll auction a platinum donor plaque. In 3, someone will decide if I'm allowed to comfort the boy. And in the next few months, I'll learn why he knows my lullaby and what Helixin has been hiding. The ballroom at Bayview Children's Hospital had been polished into something it never tried to be on ordinary days. Opulent. Crystal stemware chimed above linen like snow on glass. The scent of gardenias imported for the donors struggled to mask the soft tang of antiseptic that never quite leaves a children's hospital. A plexiglass model of the newest NICU incubator sat under a spotlight near the stage, gleaming like a trophy. I hovered at the edge of the light wash, one ear on comes. MC is at Q. 3, 30 seconds to donor welcome. Our stage manager crackled. I straightened a wayward uplight, ran through contingency lines in my head, and tried not to think about how many ways a live gala could spiral. A movement at the end of the glass corridor caught my eye. The NICU Curtina simple white panel on a ceiling track shivered. Then came a sound that did not belong to strings or cocktail chatter, humming, not the polished string quartet in the ballroom, but a tune that came in on a thin, breathy line. The first 2 notes wobbled. The third found a home, and the rest of the phrase settled into something achingly familiar. Hush now. Rivers low. I forgot to breathe. My mum used to hum that in our apartment in Dayton when the radiator banged at midnight. She'd written the little song herself. There was no recording, no sheet music, just her breath against my hair and the smell of drugstore lilacs. I hadn't heard it in over a decade, not since the day a 3-word editorial note, wrong news, cycle, crushed my last big investigation into neonatal data abuse and shoved me out of the newsroom. I slipped off cums and moved toward the curtain. Behind it, a small respite room off the NICU waited under fluorescent white. A boy about 5 sat on a low blue stool, his sneakers not quite touching the tile. He hummed while tilting his head like he was listening to the air itself. Close-cropped brown hair, ears a little red from the Tuchel AC, an IV port taped neatly at the crook of his elbow. A white plastic band on his wrist read MS001 in block letters. He looked up when I stopped in the doorway and then he smelled me. Not the way a dog would, but with a sudden, soft intake that felt purposeful, curious. My cheap perfume jasmine-laced and stubbornly me since college must have reached him. He raised his index finger, traced a gentle curve in the air, pointed to the scarf looped at my neck. The humming paused. Then he supplied the line I always forgot as a kid. Drift slow. Lanterns glow. Hey, buddy, I managed, kneeling to get on his level. Where'd you learn that? He didn't answer. Instead, he breathed in again, like he was trying to bottle the scent for later. His shoulders dropped. He reached as if to touch the fringe of my scarf. A voice slid in like a needle. Ma'am, you can't be in here. A woman in teal scrubs drew the curtain wider and set herself between me and the boy. Her badge read Helixin, Biotech Clinical Support. Her face was composed in the way of people who've been told the stakes are high and the margin for error is zero. I'm PR for the hospital, I said, showing my badge. He's anxious. Let me, here's a study subject. There's a contact protocol. She said it like she'd practiced each word from a laminated sheet. Behind her, the boy started to rock, hands pressed flat to his chest. The humming cut off as if someone had flicked a switch. 2 minutes, I asked quietly, just to settle him. No touching. I'll stay by the door. We have my protocol. I dropped my voice. Not my eyes is that no one panics in the middle of a live gala. I slipped my scarf free, held the fabric at arm's length so the boy could see it coming, and set it like a feather onto his open palm. Big breath in, like blowing up a balloon, I coached, letting instinct find the right cadence. Fill the belly, now slow. Let it float out. He paused, the rocking. He inhaled, then exhaled. One breath, another. His shoulders eased. I hummed the first 3 notes. He answered, steadier now. Our breathing found the same rhythm without trying. I'll sit at the threshold, I told the aide. He stays inside. No one touches. Deal. Before she could reply, a man's voice cut across the curtain, crisp enough to move furniture without asking. What's going on? He stepped in like he'd been summoned by stage light. Dark navy suit, tie without a crease. The kind of presence that belongs behind microphones and in black SUVs. Carter Hale, CEO of Helixin Biotech, looked exactly like his profile in Wiredcool. Measured, practiced. Behind him, 2 security guys hung back, taking up space without raising volume. Mr. Hale, I said, standing but keeping the scarf where it was. He's anxious. I'm helping him regulate. 2 minutes. Something flickered across Carter's expression, quick as a hairline crack in tempered glass. He nodded. 2 minutes, he said, to me first, then to the aide. Vitals only. No additional stimuli. He didn't raise his voice. The room obeyed anyway. I heard a truth in his tone. He knew how to command, without caring who liked him for it. Another presence arrived with the calm of an elevator that only ever opens where it should. Silver hair in a perfect twist, pearl pin at the collar, a black sheath dress that said boardroom even under hospital fluorescents. Eleanor Hale Carter's mother and Helixin's chair took in the arrangement with a half-second scan, then rested her gaze on the plastic wristband. Helixin business stays within Helixin protocol, she said, voice low and even as a metronome. The gala is the gala. The NICU is the NICU. Let's keep the lines clear. I'd seen her on business magazine covers, read her quotes about grit, watched audiences bend around her center of gravity. She gave the boy one glance. Then she looked at me. Not with contempt, exactly more like evaluation. What variable was I? How expensive would it be to leave me unchecked? And you are? She asked. Hospital PR, I said. The kid is calmer. Give him 5 minutes, and I can guarantee you no donor will see a meltdown in the hallway. Her head tilted a degree. Your name? Hannah Reed. Something unsaid passed through the Helixin trio. The aide eased off half a step. Carter opened his stance, as if making my line of sight a choice. Eleanor's mouth set in a civility as thin as glass. Containing optics is noble, she said, but don't let sentiment confuse judgment. He's an orphan enrolled in our morning seat study. His file is confidential. Missteps are costly. The word orphan landed in the hollow place under my sternum. Morning seed, MS001, an acronym I'd chased and never caught. In my last year in the newsroom, the one that ended with my desk emptied into a banker's box. I understand risk, I said. And the biggest one tonight is a terrified kid under a blaze of phone cameras. Carter's fingers adjusted his cuff in a precise half-millimeter tug-the-tell of a man measuring two bad options. Keep him here, he decided. 3 minutes. After the donor segment, he goes back to NICU. No photos. No extra contact. Understood. Understood, I said. I turned back to the boy, hummed those 3 notes once more. He met Measlow sure now. The aide watched his heart rate on a tablet. Eleanor stepped aside to take a brief call. Her voice velvet-trapped steel. Applause swelled from the ballroom, a new wave of donors sweeping toward the stage. I realized my hand had remained under the boy's, palm up, a table for the scarf. His fingers were warm. I drew away gently, like convincing a bird it wasn't trapped. What's your name? I whispered. He blinked, then tapped his wristband with a small, firm finger. Ben, he said soft, the N rounding into Benny. Then he raised the scarf to his nose, took one last anchored breath, and smiled without sound. Hannah. My cum squawked in my ear. MC wants you side stage for the Helixon photo op. On my way, I murmured, eyes still on Ben. I'll be back, I told him. Promise. He nodded, no humming this time, just the steady tide of breath. I set the scarf on his knees. The aide wavered, then let it be. Back in the ballroom, everything turned bright and loud again. MC banter, handshakes, an escalator of donors riding a champagne buzz. Carter stood by the plexiglass incubator and delivered a pitch-perfect paragraph about the future of neonatal care and ethics. Every syllable landed, practiced, and clean. But when he said responsibility, the tendon in his throat jumped a tiny ripple that didn't belong in the script. Eleanor hovered behind him, smile drawn as a clean line. She didn't look at her son during the flash ballet. She looked directly into the cameras. I did my job, smoothed, smiled, steered the live show toward its landing. But the lullaby had lifted some latch inside me I thought I'd welded shut. When the crowd drifted toward the cocktail annex, I excused myself down the glass corridor and slowed by the curtain. Quiet now. No humming. No rocking. Just the buzz of a NICU machine behind the wall at the far end of the hall. A ceiling camera pinpricked a red LED. Below it, a maintenance panel hung open. Someone had scrawled on tape with a black Sharpie, MS night check, 10:30, Hannah. On deck for thank yous, comes chirped. We nail this and we're golden. Copy, I said, my voice steady, my pulse not. As I stepped back into the spotlight wash, I knew 2 things. 1, I would get the gala across the finish line without a headline explosion. 2, if I left tonight without tugging that thread lullaby, Jasmine, MSOO1I, would regret it for the rest of my life. Somewhere beyond the bay, a winter storm was massing. In here, a song had started, and I was going to have to sing it to the end. The donor reel wound down to polite applause, and the ballroom lights crept up to clicks bright enough for checks to be written, soft enough for everyone to feel beautiful. I stood off stage with my clipboard prop and my reel to-do list in my head. Media wrangling, a board member who insisted on speaking off teleprompter. 3 reporters who'd RSVP'd as +1 and arrived as plus camera, and 1 boy behind a white curtain who knew my mother's lullaby, read. Dr. Andrea Morales, the hospital coup, intercepted me with her purposeful stride and a smile that said, "Everything is fine because I am telling you it's fine." Helixson wants their photo at the incubator, then the big check handoff. "You're escorting?" "Copy," I said. "Quick NICU question." "Not tonight," she murmured, eyes flicking to a passing trustee. "We've got 50 million reasons to keep the spotlight on new equipment and off research drama." "Understood?" "Understood," I said, "because that's the job." But the MS night check, 10:30 Sharpie note burned in my peripheral vision. Like a microwave clock you've been ignoring for months, Carter Hale emerged from a donor knot, gliding from handshake to handshake like a seasoned candidate. Up close, he had the gravity of a person who's been told yes most of his life and learned to hear the no underneath. His gaze found mine for a fraction-quick flash of recognition, then back to the cameras. "Mr. Hale, Miss Hale," I said, stepping in. "We'll do the incubator photo with Dr. Chan from NICU and Dr. Morales. Then the check presentation." "Lovely," Eleanor said, making lovely sound like a court ruling. Her eyes swept the stage, edge-counting flags, sponsors, risks. We moved, a little parade, donors, doctors, a tech billionaire in sneakers who'd asked, "How many incubators do we get if I add a 0? And me, the stagehand smiling in every direction. The flash ballet began. Carter's hand settled on the plexi cradle like he'd held real ones. For one still frame, the edges of his mouth relaxed into something unpracticed. I used the moment to slip my phone out and text Alyssa, my favorite NICU nurse since I joined Bayview. A relentless optimist who kept a spreadsheet of preemie firsts, like other people kept recipes. Me. "You on tonight?" Alyssa, starting 10. "Why?" Me saw a Helixson aide with a kiddo labeled MS001. "Who's he?" Alyssa, "Oh that." Alyssa, "Please don't text specifics on this channel." Alyssa, "I'll find you after turnover." A tightness I hadn't noticed in my shoulders eased a notch. Not everything was going to be protocol and no. Somewhere in the building, a nurse with glitter nail polish would tell me the part the press releases left out. The incubator photo wrapped. We shuffled to the oversized check. Eleanor produced a pen, signed with a practiced flourish, and the MC delivered a line about public-private partnerships that had tested poorly in rehearsal and still made it out alive. Cameras snapped. Hands clasped air. Someone laughed like a bell between poses. Carter leaned a degree toward me, still facing forward. "Thank you for earlier," he said softly. "The singing." "I didn't sing," I said. He did, something like a smile, then gone. "I meant for not escalating. There are a lot of moving parts." "What does MS stand for?" I asked, equally soft. "Morning seed." He didn't look at me when he answered. "An internal research program," he said. "Approved and monitored." "By whom?" "By the people the law requires." The smile left for good. "This is not the time." "Right," I said. "Tonight is for incubators. The incubators matter," he said. And for the first time I heard the part of him that believed things you can touch are safer than the slippery ethics of data. Fewer nights on a ventilator. Fewer complications. "That's not a photo op." "Then don't make it one." I said before I could stuff the impulse back down. "Make it transparent." He turned his head then, just a little. I could see the tendons ease and tighten in his jaw. Transparency isn't binary, he said. It's 1,000 decisions. Some of them look like secrets until you can explain them in full. Then explain them, I said. Not here, he said. And our parade moved again. We delivered the check to thunder and a confetti cannon that was not in the run of show. File under donors who bring their own drama, as the band swelled into something Motown to lubricate the bidding. I handed the MC off to our stage manager and took the service corridor back toward the NICU. The curtain was shut. The aide's silhouette stood like a checkpoint guard. I watched for 10 seconds, long enough to see her hand rise in time with the child's breathing and fall a beat after. The scarf was no longer on Ben's knees. Panic flickered, and then I saw it, folded on a chair, placed carefully like someone intended to return it. "Ms. Reed," a voice said behind me. I didn't jump, but it was close. Eleanor Hale stood with one of Helix's security guys flanking her at an appropriate distance. She'd apparently perfected the art of appearing without footfall. "You have good instincts," she said. "Crisis people do. You read rooms. You calm them. Useful." "Thank you," I said, because I was raised too. It would be a shame if those instincts were misdirected. Her tone did not sharpen. If anything, it gentled. "You left journalism under unfortunate circumstances. I remember the piece thinly sourced, wrong week. I'd hate to see you risk this job chasing a story you can't close." There it was, the resume bullet I never put on LinkedIn. A 3-month investigation into infant biometric data that got spiked because a bigger scandal broke, and there are only so many minutes on a nightly news show. The editor said, "Wrong news cycle," not "you were wrong." It didn't matter. The door closed the same. "I'm not chasing anything," I said, letting the sentence be true for the next 4 hours at least. "I'm keeping your donors happy and our NICU calm. And in the morning," she asked. "Tomorrow is also my job," I said. She dipped her chin like we'd completed a dance. "Enjoy your evening, Ms. Reed." She moved past me into the light wash of the corridor and was gone. I found a shadowed patch by a vending machine. Checked my watch. 9:52. Alyssa's shift started at 10. I texted her I'd wait by the family lounge. Then I pulled up my notes app and wrote 2 lines. Lullaby, Jasmine, MS001, A. Childish comfort to see the words contained in a black font box. A donor couple stopped me on the way back to the ballroom to ask if the NICU allowed evening visits for their teenage daughter who wanted to see the babies because she's thinking about nursing. I walked them to the nurse's station, delivered my favorite line, "Tiny humans, big feelings," talked to the charge nurse about timing, and waved to a volunteer asterisk. Reading Goodnight Moon to a roomful of tired parents. The hospital, the real hospital, was still where it always had been, a maze of quiet, repetitive kindness. Alyssa found me in the family lounge with her hair in a messy bun and a cup of coffee she cradled like contraband. Her badge bounced as she walked. Glitter stars sparkled on her index finger. "You look like you haven't sat down in 6 hours." She said. "I haven't," I said. "Tell me what you can without violating every policy we both signed." She sank into the chair across from me, angled so her back was to the hallway. MS001 is in a Helix Inran protocol. Our nurses cover vitals. Their aides do the rest. Charting is separate. We see enough to keep him safe, not enough to know the whole picture. Is he okay? My voice did a thing at the end. I hated added a softness, the tiniest plea. He's sweet, she said. Sensitive. Smells everything before he decides if he likes it. Humming helps. Weighted blankets help. He calms when we keep stimuli predictable. She tapped her glitter nail on her coffee lid. He calmed with you. He hummed my mother's lullaby, I said, and Alyssa's eyebrows rose into the territory labeled OK. Plot twist. One she made up. Not something from a streaming playlist. That's wild, she said. There's a Helixon night check every so often. They take him to their exam room down the hall. 10:30 tonight, if the Sharpie graffiti is accurate. It is, I said. Don't do anything stupid, she said, raising her palms before I could protest. I know that face. You had it the night you talked the mayor's comes director out of cancelling the toy drive during a measles scare. I'm not going to ambush anyone, I said. But if I accidentally end up in the same hallway at the same time, I'd like to not be surprised. Alyssa's mouth compressed like a line drawn with a ruler. Fair, half the time. I think the only thing keeping this place humane is accidentally being in the right hallway. We sat a minute, listening to the vending machine hum. Down the hall, a dad in a Warriors hoodie walked past carrying a breast pump like it might explode. Somewhere a baby cried, then another cried in sympathy. The tiny chorus of an entire wing negotiating with sleep, who signs off on the Helixon protocol. I asked. Liga would say the IRB, she said. But IRBs are only as brave as the people who fill the chairs. She lowered her voice. And the Hale family fills a lot of chairs. Carter seems. I searched for words and landed on conflicted. Better than soulless, Alyssa said. He donated skin-to-skin recliners last year without a press release. He also brought us those monitors. I hate that beep at shadows. People aren't one thing. 10:27. I stood. I need to be seen in the ballroom for the paddle raise. Then I may check on the AV cable run in the NICU corridor. Alyssa stood, too. She squeezed my elbow, glitter catching under fluorescence. If you see something that looks wrong, Hannah, don't blow it up on Twitter. Bring it to me first. Bring it to someone who can help for real, please. I'm retired from Twitter crusades, I said, which was mostly true. I'm also not great at letting go. I noticed, she said, soft. Be careful. Back at the ballroom, the band shifted from Motown to a Billboard hit that made donors feel cleverly current. The auctioneer warmed up his paddles. The MC gestured to me for the closing script. I delivered the lines, hit my marks, and felt like a person operating a very smooth machine. At 10:31. I was a person standing in a shadow outside a white curtain, counting the seconds between footsteps. The Sharpie note had not lied. The Helixon aides appeared with a rolling vitals cart and a tablet on a stand. The teal scrubs woman from earlier glanced down the corridor, then signed something to her colleague, fast, practiced. He nodded. They drew the curtain. Hey, I said gently, stepping forward just enough to be noticed, not enough to be a problem. If he needs the scarf again, I'm right here. The aide's eyes flicked to mine, recognition, wariness, something like gratitude buried. She didn't answer, but when the curtain's side closed, a corner lifted a fraction, and I caught a glimpse of a small hand hiss curled around the fringe of cheap jasmine-scented wool somewhere beyond the bay. Thunder rolled so softly you could miss it if you weren't listening. In here, the hum of machines kept time. I checked the hallway camera's red LED. looked down at my hands to calm the tremor I didn't want, and told myself a line I'd used 1,000 times on other people. We'll do this the right way. We'll keep everyone safe, and we won't look away. The next morning, San Francisco was wet and gold, that weird mix of fog and sunshine that makes the city look like it's been washed in champagne. From the Bayview Children's Hospital parking structure, I could see the top of the Bay Bridge vanishing into clouds. The gala headlines were already live. Helixson donates $50 million to advance neonatal research. Bayview Gala, a triumph of public-private partnership. The photos looked beautiful. Carter, Hale handsome, reserved. Eleanor Hale composed and benevolent. Me half blurred in the background, holding a clipboard and pretending to believe every word of the press release. But no one mentioned the boy inside. The hospital hummed with its weekday rhythm coffee carts, squeaky shoes, pager beeps. I'd promised myself I'd focus on real PR work, debrief, thank you emails, donor follow-ups. But I lasted maybe an hour before I was back in the NICU corridor, pretending to check on the press kit drop box. The white curtain was open this time. The chair where the boy had sat was empty, neatly tucked under a side table. A new chart on the door, read transfer, Helixson, clinical suite, level 7, room 702B. So they'd moved him. My pulse ticked up, half guilt, half relief. I wasn't crazy. Something had shifted. Alyssa appeared at the nurse's station, hair twisted up, eyes half behind her mask. She caught my look and sighed. Don't start. I'm not starting, I said. I'm just observing. You're vibrating, she said. You always vibrate when you're chasing something. Do you know why they moved him? Officially, better monitoring conditions. She lowered her voice. Unofficially, probably to keep him off this floor. Too visible. Too many witnesses. Level 7's private research, I said. That's not even technically hospital property. Exactly. We both went quiet. A passing resident nodded at us, clueless. Alyssa leaned in. I did his morning vitals before they transferred him. He was fine, heart rate steady, oxygen good. But Hannah, the kid, looked scared. He's starting to notice when the Helixson people come for him. He freezes. I closed my eyes for a beat. That's trauma response. She gave me a look. You think I don't know that? He's 5. Whatever they're doing, it's not child-friendly. My phone buzzed. New message, known number, unknown. You left this. A photo followed. My scarf, folded on a stainless steel table. Next to a Helixson tablet. Unknown, room 702, B11. A .m. My first instinct was that it was Alyssa messing with me. Then I noticed the timestamp sent from an encrypted corporate network. I typed back, me, who is this? No response. By 10:45. I was sitting in the hospital cafe trying to look like I wasn't plotting industrial espionage. My iced coffee sweated onto the table. I told myself I wouldn't go. I told myself I was smarter than this. I told myself walking into a biotech lab uninvited was a fast track back to unemployment. At 10:59. I was in the elevator to level 7. The door to the research wing required a badge swipe, but a courier with a cart of samples came out just as I arrived. I caught the door with a polite thanks and slipped inside, pretending I belonged. The Helixson suite felt nothing like the hospital floors below. The air was colder, drier. The lights were a little too white. Everything smelled faintly of disinfectant and ozone. The hallway curved in a sterile arc toward a glass-walled observation room. Through the glass, I saw the boy Ben sitting cross-legged on a padded mat. He was wearing tiny noise-cancelling headphones and staring at a line of blinking lights on a panel. A woman in scrubs sat nearby, taking notes on a tablet. Carter Hale stood on the far side of the glass, hands in his pockets, watching. He didn't notice me at first. I stood perfectly still, like I was part of the wall. Then he turned, and his expression shifted from confusion to something halfway between recognition and exasperation. He stepped out, closing the glass door behind him. "Ms. Reed," he said quietly, "you shouldn't be up here." "I could say the same," I said. "What is this?" "A controlled sensory assessment," he said, calm but clipped. "Standard procedure for with trauma responses." His jaw tightened. "You're reading too much into it. Then explain it to me." He exhaled slowly. "We're measuring neural responses to environmental stimuli. It's harmless. It's does he know what's happening? He's a participant." His guardian signed consent. "Guardian." I repeated. "He's an orphan, technically," he said, and that word hung in the air like smoke. I took a step closer. "Who texted me? Who sent the photo of my scarf?" He blinked. "What photo?" I showed him my phone. His eyes flicked to the screen and back to me, expression unreadable. "Not me, then. Who has access to your secure network?" His silence was the answer. "Listen," he said finally, lowering his voice. "You think I don't care about that kid. You think I want to be here watching this. But I can't stop the protocols. Not without evidence that they're doing harm. Right now, all I have are suspicions and a mother who built this company on secrecy. So prove it," I said. "Find the evidence. I've tried. She controls the data servers. Every file runs through her I'm boxed in. You're the CEO. On paper," he said. "She's the one the board listens to." The boy shifted on the mat, looking toward the glass as if he'd heard us through it. His fingers found a pattern on the floor and began to trace its more circles, rhythmic. Then he looked up and mouthed something. I couldn't hear, but I could read the shape of the words. "Sing." My throat closed. "He's asking for the song." Carter turned, startled. "What? The lullaby?" "He wants it." He hesitated, then gestured to the aide inside. She shook her head, protocol. Carter overrode her with a single nod. She took off the headphones. The boy looked straight through the glass at me. I pressed my hand against it, palm flat. He mirrored the gesture. "Go ahead," Carter said softly. I hummed. Just 3 notes. The glass dulled the sound, but the rhythm carried. His mouth shaped the next line. The aide's tablet beeped spikes of color, readings leaping across the screen. Carter frowned. Heart rate up, but steady, not panic. "It's recognition," I said. "Comfort." He looked at me then, fully. "Why does he know your song?" "I was hoping you could tell me," I said. Security arrived 3 minutes later, summoned by someone who decided public relations manager in the research wing sounded bad in a report. Carter waved them off with executive authority, but the message was clear. This conversation never happened. He walked me back to the elevator himself. We stopped short of the doors. "Whatever this is," he said quietly, "you need to be careful. You poke too hard, you'll make enemies you can't see coming." "I've already made worse," I said. "You read my file, remember?" He almost smiled, then didn't. "If you're going to keep digging, do it smart. Don't use hospital servers. And don't trust texts from unknown numbers. Who should I trust, then? He looked away. That's the problem. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Before they closed, he said, "I'll look for the scarf." Then the doors slid shut, and I was alone with the hum of the lift and the weight of what had just happened. Back at my office, the air smelled faintly of stale coffee and printer ink. I closed the blinds, pulled up my laptop, and opened a blank document title, Morning Seed, Unofficial Notes, Miso 01, equals Benaprox, age 5 knows rivers low. Lullaby, my mother's original Helixin protocol, sensory testing consent, signed by Guardian Who, Hail family controls data possible genetic connection. I stared at that last bullet until the letters blurred. Genetic no, too wild, too personal, too impossible. But the way he had breathed me in, the way he'd calmed, the way the monitors had responded. I shut the laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes. The phone buzzed again. Another message, same unknown number. Unknown, not all orphans are born. Some are made unknown. Check storage room B2 at shift change. Outside, sirens wailed and faded toward the bay. Inside, the hospital kept breathing in its steady, mechanical rhythm. And under all of it, I could almost hear a tune 3 notes, then silence, waiting for me to answer. The message glowed on my phone long after the screen should have dimmed. Not all orphans are born. Some are made. Check storage room B2 at shift change. The words were short. Harmless on paper except, my gut told me they weren't. Whoever had sent them knew about Ben. Knew I'd gone to level 7 and wanted me to keep digging. I shouldn't have. But I couldn't stop at 5:45 p.m. The hospital began its quiet metamorphosis from day to night. Overhead lights softened. Volunteers clocked out. Nurses swapped badges. And the corridors grew calmer in that deceptively peaceful wail, like a tide pulling back before a wave. I left my office, carrying a half-empty coffee cup like a prop, walking with the same confident, exhausted stride of every hospital worker at the end of a shift. Down one hallway, then another. Past pediatrics and the old donor wall that still listed names of benefactors who had been dead for 20 years. The sign for storage B2 was tucked in a basement corridor few visitors ever saw. The smell changed, hematalic, cold, heavy with detergent. Fluorescent lights hummed. The elevator doors opened with a reluctant ding, and I stepped out into a hallway lined with mop buckets and locked supply cages. The clock on my phone read 6:01 p.m. shift change. A pair of janitors pushed past with a squeaky cart, chatting about the Giants game. They didn't even glance at me. Once they were gone, the silence fell in thick layers. The storage room door was marked with a small sign, authorized personnel only. Of course, I pressed the hand. Then I noticed something small wedged into the crack between the door and the frame. A disposable glove, twisted into a knot inside the knot. A key card. I glanced up the Holmtiand, swiped it. The light blinked green. The room wasn't big. Metal shelves climbed the walls, filled with boxes labeled with neat Helixin barcodes. A refrigerated cabinet hummed in the corner. On the center table sat a small folder, pale blue with the hospital logo. The folder wasn't dusty. Someone had placed it there recently, maybe hours ago. I opened it. Inside was a thin stack of forms. The first page stopped my breath. Bayview Hospital Assisted Donation Program dormant. 2013 to 2016. My own name was on the donor list. Gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. My brain tried to rewind to make sense of the year. Graduate school, tuition overdue, the fertility clinic near campus that advertised. Compensation up to $8,000 per cycle. I hadn't told anyone. I'd donated eggs, twice signed forms, taken hormone shots, never thought about it again. They'd promised anonymity, except now, 8 years later, that program had a Helixon label on it, and right below my name, highlighted in yellow, was a single notation: sample transferred to morning seed program. 2018, Ms. Morning seed. Ben, I flipped to the next page. Photos, ultrasound scans, lab codes, gestational charts blurred together. None of them meant anything except the one that did. A photo stapled to the corner. A baby swaddled, date stamp 5 years ago. My throat went dry. The eyes were mine. Footsteps echoed outside. I shoved the folder back, slid the keycard into my pocket, and stepped behind a row of shelves just as the door opened. To voices, one female, one male. Make it fast, the woman said. The sound of boxes shifting, paper rustling. They're starting to connect dots, the man said. You saw the footage from last night? The PR girl. Yeah, she was on the NICU floor again this morning. You think she's dumb enough to? Don't underestimate curiosity, the woman snapped. She's already been in the press once for poking around where she shouldn't. Keep her busy until Eleanor decides what to do. The man grunted. And the kid? Night transfer. Singapore facility. Away from the noise. I froze. Tonight. Yes, Eleanor's sending the transport at midnight. A pause. The sound of the folder I'd just read being lifted off the table. Then the woman said, Where the hell? I left it right here. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I slipped between shelves, eased toward the back door, a fire exit with a push bar and a silent alarm sticker. If they saw me, I was finished. 1 step, 2 steps. Then a loud clang as a metal tray somewhere behind me tipped over. Hey. I ran, the door burst open with a hiss of air. Alarms didn't sound. Either the sticker was bluff or someone had cut the system. I sprinted down the service corridor. My breath loud, shoes slapping concrete. I didn't look back until I reached the stairwell. Voices shouted, basement stairwell. She went that way. I took the stairs 2 at a time, up 1 level, then ducked through the nearest door. A storage closet full of 4 stands. I crouched, listening. The footsteps pounded past and faded. My heartbeat filled the silence like a drum. When I finally stepped out, the hallway was empty. I checked my phone. No signal, basement dead zone. I climbed another flight and slipped into a hallway lined with family waiting rooms. The warm smell of coffee and antiseptic returned, normal and unreal. I walked fast, head down, until I reached the staff elevator. Inside, I pressed the button for level 7. If they were moving Ben at midnight, that gave me less than 6 hours. By the time the elevator doors opened, the hallway outside Helixon's suite was quiet. The lights were dimmed, the glass observation room dark. No guards, no aides. Only one office light still glowed through frosted glass, etched with the name Carter Hale, Chief Executive Officer. I knocked once. The door opened halfway. Carter stood there, jacket off, tie loose, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked tired, maybe more human than he had the night before. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. "Something like that," I said. "We need to talk." He gestured for me to come in. The office was lined with steel and glass, like someone designed it to impress investors, not people. Papers were scattered across his desk, along with a half-empty coffee cup and an open laptop. I dropped the folder on the desk. "Recognize it?" His expression didn't change, but his knuckles tightened on the cup. "Where did you get this?" "Basement storage. Room B2. Don't worry, locked it back up." He flipped through the pages, eyes scanning the donor list, then the ultrasound photos. When he reached the highlighted line under my name, he stopped. "Hannah." "Don't say my name like you pity me," I said. "Say it like you owe me an explanation." He looked up, his voice low. I didn't know the specifics of the donors. The morning seed embryos were all listed as anonymous code only. "I swear, you're saying you didn't know your company stole biological material from an old donation program?" "Helixon didn't steal anything. The parent lab merged with us after acquisition. All assets transferred legally." "Assets?" I snapped. "We're talking about human lives, not trademarks." Carter rubbed his forehead. "You think I don't know that? My mother's been running these programs since before I joined. She treats genetics like property mine, hers, anyone's. She's planning to move Ben tonight," I said. "Singapore facility." His head snapped up. "Who told you that?" "Let's say I overheard. Midnight transfer. Which means if you don't stop her, the boy is gone before sunrise." Carter went still. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the city outside. Then he said quietly, "She wouldn't use an international transfer. That's a liability. She would if it erases a trail." He looked at the folder again, then at me. "If you're right, we have a few hours. But this isn't a story you can break on social media. You'll need proof. Digital proof transfer manifests, custody logs, DNA chain of custody. Those are on the internal server, where—" He hesitated. "Server rooms on the roof level. You'll need dual clearance, mine and hers. Then you give me yours and hers." I managed a thin smile. "You said she controls everything. Maybe it's time someone rewrote the access rules." He studied me for a moment, weighing trust against fear. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out his ID badge. "I'm only doing this because you're right about one thing," he said. "We're running out of time." He handed me the badge. I took it, feeling the thin weight of it in my palm, the key to a company's secrets. "And maybe to a little boy's life. When this is over," I said, "you're going to have to decide what kind of man you really are." He looked away. I already did. I just didn't like the answer. At 11:42 p.m., I stepped out onto the hospital rooftop. The wind was sharp, the fog rolling in off the bay like smoke. Across the pad, a Helixon helicopter idled, lights flashing red against the night, and inside the glass stairwell leading to the server room, a shadow moved, small, quick, unmistakably a child's, Ben, somewhere below. Alarms began to arm. Midnight was coming. The wind off the bay was colder than I expected, sharp, biting, and damp, carrying the smell of salt and rain. Below me, the city stretched in ribbons of light. Above, the helicopter's blades were already spinning slow circles, slicing the fog into ribbons. The red navigation light pulsed across the rooftop, washing the glass stairwell in a heartbeat rhythm, and in that red glow, I saw him, Ben, small, barefoot, clutching the scarf I'd left behind. He wasn't supposed to be here, Ben, I whispered, but the roar of the chopper drowned me out. The wind tugged at my hair and tore the word from my throat before it reached him. He turned toward the sound, blinking, confused, the way a child looks when they know their name but can't find where it came from. A figure appeared at the top of the stairwell, a woman in a dark coat, hair pinned high, face calm in a way that terrified me. Eleanor Hale, of course it was her. She placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. He flinched but didn't pull away. The chopper light caught the side of her face, cutting half of it in shadow. She looked like a statue carved out of control and confidence. When she saw me, she didn't even look surprised. "Ms. Reed," she said, voice low, precise. "You're remarkably persistent. I could say the same about you," I shot back, forcing my way into the wind. "It's almost midnight, Eleanor. Taking a child on a corporate jet is one thing, but this..." She smiled, small and patient, like I was a student who'd just misread a problem. "This isn't abduction," she said. "It's relocation. A routine transfer to our Singapore facility. Better staff, better security. Better for him, he's a 5-year-old, I said. "Not a file you can move between offices." Her gaze flicked down to the scarf in his hand. "He's more than that. He's data. And data, Ms. Reed, must be protected." I felt something hot rise in my chest. He's alive. He hums when he's scared. He recognizes people. He breathes and feels. Because of me, she cut in sharply. Because of my program. Without Morning Seed, he would not exist. You think you can shame me with morality. You should be thanking me for giving your genome a future. My stomach dropped. My what? Eleanor's smile widened, gentle and venomous. "Oh, Hannah, you didn't think it was coincidence, did you? The lullaby, the way he responds to you. He carries your sequence. You're his donor." The words landed like a punch. The air went out of me, the rooftop, the entire city. I gripped the railing to stay upright. Ben looked between us, sensing the tension but not understanding. His small fingers twisted the scarf tighter. Eleanor tilted her head. "You sold potential. We realized it. I see no crime in that." I took a step forward. "He deserves a life, not a patent." Her eyes hardened. "He deserves purpose. Every cell of him was engineered to push medicine forward. You're confusing sentiment with progress. Then maybe progress needs a conscience." I heard footsteps behind me, quick, heavy. I spun around. Carter, he was half running across the helipad, tie whipping in the wind, his coat unbuttoned. His voice barely carried over the thrum of the blades. "Mother," he shouted, "stop this." Eleanor didn't flinch. "I warned you once not to let emotions cloud your judgment," she said, her voice calm as stone. "Now you come running, chasing after a PR girl and a child you don't understand." Carter stopped several feet away, chest heaving. "You can't take him out of the country without clearance." "The ethics board will," she laughed, soft and sad. "Ethics? You think ethics stopped Helixson from saving lives? From saving you?" The words sliced the air between them. Carter blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You were my first trial," she said simply. "You wouldn't have survived the fever at 9 months. I resequenced your immune markers before the board ever approved the therapy. You are proof that sometimes control is mercy." For a moment, Even the wind seemed to stop. Carter stared at her, at the woman who'd raised him, now admitting she'd rewritten him. "You used me," he said quietly. "I perfected you," she replied. The sound that came from him wasn't anger. It was heartbreak wrapped in disbelief. "Get away from the child," he said. Eleanor didn't move. "Carter, think. You have shareholders, a company, a legacy. Don't throw it away for a woman with a guilty conscience and a misplaced maternal instinct." "That woman," he said, "reminds me what a human being looks like." And then he moved. He crossed the distance fast, cutting between me and his mother. Eleanor's security guards, who'd been shadowing near the chopper, hesitated. No one wanted to lay a hand on the CEO. Carter reached Ben, crouched, and held out his hand. "Ben, buddy, come here. We're going to get you somewhere safe." The boy looked torn, one hand clinging to the scarf, the other hovering near Carter's. He looked to Eleanor, who said softly, "It's all right, darling. She's confused. Come to me." That word darling triggered something in Ben. His face scrunched, confused, anxious. He dropped the scarf. The wind caught it, whipping it off the pad. I lunged instinctively, catching the trailing end before it flew over the edge. The motion made Eleanor's guards jump. One moved forward and Carter snapped back off. Ben let out a small, frightened sound, more vibration than voice, and darted behind Carter, clutching his coat. Eleanor's expression flickered, the first real crack in her composure. "Carter, step aside." "No," he said simply. She sighed, as if disappointed by inevitability. "Then you leave me no choice." She turned, signaling to the pilot. The helicopter's blades accelerated, thunder filling the air. I could barely hear myself think. The wash of air pushed against us, fierce and blinding. Eleanor stepped toward the door, intending to board, but Carter moved first, blocking her path. "Mother," he yelled, "stop this before it destroys everything." Her reply came like a whip. "It already has." The red light strobed across her face as she reached into her coat pocket. For a split second, I thought she was pulling a phone. Then I saw the glint of metal. "Carter." I screamed. The world slowed. She wasn't aiming at him, she was aiming at me. Carter lunged sideways, grabbing her wrist just as the shot went off. The bullet ricocheted off the railing, sparks exploding in the dark. The sound of it was swallowed by the roar of the blades. Ben screamed, a raw, wordless sound that cut through everything. Eleanor stumbled, losing her balance as Carter wrenched the gun away. He shouted something I couldn't hear, and she fell to one knee. The wind ripped her hair loose, strands catching the red light. Security finally surged forward. "Get the weapon," Carter barked. 2 guards restrained her, the gun clattering to the ground. She didn't fight. She just looked at her son, calm again, almost serene. "This is what happens," she said, "when emotion overrides purpose." Carter stared back. "No, this is what happens when purpose kills empathy." He turned to me. "Get him inside." I grabbed Ben's hand. He was shaking, clutching the scarf I'd rescued. Together we ran toward the stairwell, ducking behind the glass as the sound of the chopper shut down. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. When the door closed behind us, the noise outside faded to a dull, steady thrum. Ben clung to me, pressing his face into my shoulder. I rocked him without thinking, whispering the first lines of the lullaby. "Rivers low, lanterns glow." He hiccuped between breaths, matching the rhythm. Slowly, His trembling eased. Carter appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, streaked with wind and exhaustion. "She's been detained," he said, voice flat. "Security called SFPD. They'll handle the weapon. But the board will cover this up if they can." I looked at him over Ben's head. "Then we make sure they can't." He nodded once, eyes hard. "I'll get the data from the servers. If we leak the transfer manifests, the Morningseed project dies with her reputation." "Not just leak it," I said. "We go to the feds. Whistleblower protection. That means dragging your name into this," he warned. "I know." He looked at Ben, then at me. For the first time, there was no wall between us, just shared disbelief at how far things had gone. "What happens to him now?" he asked quietly. I looked down at Ben, who was half asleep against my shoulder, his small hand tangled in my hair. "I don't know," I said. "But whatever happens, it won't be in secret." Outside, the storm broke over the bay. Rain swept across the helipad, washing away the blood, the gunpowder, and the last of the fog. Inside the stairwell, I held the boy closer, humming into the dark. And for the first time since this all began, the lullaby didn't sound like something meant to comfort a child. It sounded like a promise. The storm didn't stop that night. It rolled over San Francisco like something alive, flashing white against glass towers, drenching every street in electric light and reflection. I didn't sleep. Ben was safe in the pediatric ward under watch from 2 nurses and a plainclothes cop. Carter had spent the last few hours sealing off the Helixon floors, quietly ordering his mother's name erased from any internal report until legal could arrive. But he knew and I knew that wouldn't last. The board would bury everything by morning if we didn't act now. I sat in his office. The blue folder spread across the desk between us like a crime scene. The page with my name on it was still there, creased, fingerprinted, damning. Carter leaned back, staring at it as if the paper itself were radioactive. 3 decades of her work, he said softly, all built on theft. My father, the donors, the scientists she bought out, every one of them, complicit. She made it sound noble, I said, like she was saving the world. He gave a bitter laugh. Eleanor never saved anything she couldn't own first. The storm thundered again, shaking the windows. He looked up, eyes tired but sharp. "If we're going to take this public, we need proof that can't disappear in a board vote. The servers on the roof store every transfer manifest, every genetic log. My badge can open the first layer. Hers is locked down, but there's a failsafe." I frowned. Dual biometric override. If both of us are incapacitated, the system can be forced open with a master code that only the 2 of us know, or used to trigger a full data dump. Which one's easier? He almost smiled. Neither. She hid the code in the system like a ghost, split it across file clusters that shouldn't talk to each other. I can map half from my account, but the other half's buried behind something called sequence E. E for Eleanor. E for everything she never wanted anyone to see. We took the freight elevator to the roof level. The air smelled of ozone and rain. The helipad was empty, Napoli's tape flapping against wet concrete. But the small server tower next to it glowed behind reinforced glass like a lighthouse. Carter scanned his badge. The door hissed open. Inside was the hum of 100 machines. Blue lights blinked in steady rhythm, casting shadows that pulsed across the floor. I'd been in data centers before, but this one felt conscious, like it knew we were intruding. He sat at the main console, fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled faster than I could read. "I can pull the directory index," he said. "But the second layer's going to flag us." "How bad?" "Automatic alert to the board and to my mother's private account." Which, given she's under arrest, probably means her legal team. I hesitated. "Then we make it count." "One shot." He nodded. "One shot." He entered a series of commands. A new window opened, black background, blinking cursor. "Enter override phrase." He typed something, paused, and looked at me. "It'll ask for 2 keys. One from her signature database, one from a secondary donor file." "Donor file," I repeated. "You mean the egg donors?" "Yes." His voice was tight. "She coded you into the system. If we use your ID number from the folder, it should unlock the second half. You're saying my DNA is a password." He met my eyes. "She made it that way." I exhaled slowly. "Then let's end this with her own weapon." We entered the code together. The string of numbers printed on my old consent form. The console froze. For a heartbeat, I thought it had crashed. Then the screen flashed white dot. Access granted. Sequence E initiated. Lines of text poured across the monitor file names, timestamps, transfer logs. But the header made my skin crawl. Sequence E, embryonic line, read, Hale, genetic pair, A1, what the hell? I whispered, "Read/Hale." Carter's eyes widened. "That can't be." The next line appeared, created 2018 via Fusion Protocol, approved by E. Hale. He scrolled faster, his face pale. Fusion Protocol, she merged donor DNA with a live somatic sample. Meaning Ben isn't just your biological child, he said, voice shaking. He's partially mine. She used both our sequences. For a second, the world tilted. The humming servers, the rain, everything went thin. She made him. From us, I said quietly, without either of us knowing. Carter leaned back, staring at the monitor like it might bite. She engineered a living prototype, her next generation of control. That's why she fought so hard to keep him classified. He's the proof her methods worked. Proof she could play God. He didn't answer. The screen kept streaming, detailing every procedure, every sample run, every doctor involved. Finally, he hit download all. The progress bar crawled across the screen. "Once this finishes," he said, "we'll have the full archive. I can deliver it to the Department of Health and Human Services before the board locks us out. And if the board gets to it first." He gave me a look I'd seen once before, the same expression on the rooftop when he'd stood between me and a bullet. "Then at least it dies with us, not with her." The console beeped. Download complete. He slipped the encrypted drive into his pocket. "Let's get out of here before someone decides to." The lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the screen went black. A new message appeared. Red text across the dark. Unauthorized access detected. Data destruction. Sequence initiated. A countdown began. 5 o'clock. 4:59. 4:58. Carter swore under his breath. She set If anyone tries to copy sequence E, it wipes the servers. Can you stop it?" "Maybe, but I need time." "Then take it." I moved to the door, peering out. The hallway beyond was still empty, but the distant sound of footsteps echoed against the metal wall's security, or worse, 3 minutes. He called, "I can freeze the core. if I reroute the lights cut out entirely. Only the emergency exit glowed faint red. The hum of the servers dropped an octave, like the room itself was dying. Hannah. Carter shouted. We have to pull the drive now. I spun back, toward him. You said it wasn't safe. It's the only copy left. He ripped the drive from the console just as the countdown hit 0:32. Sparks flared across the racks. Smoke began to curl upward from one of the processors. We ran. The door slammed open behind us. 2 security guards in Helixin uniforms appeared, shouting over the alarms. Carter shoved me behind him. Keep running. He yelled. We bolted down the corridor, smoke chasing our heels. The emergency strobes turned the world red and white and red again. Somewhere above, the helicopter alarms reactivated. Someone had triggered the evacuation sequence. By the time we burst into the stairwell, the floor shook beneath our feet. A muffled boom followed, deep and metallic. The server room door blew open behind us, spilling a wave of hot air. Carter grabbed my arm, pulling me down the stairs. We didn't stop until we hit the landing 3 levels below. He pressed his back against the wall, panting. In his hand, the drive still glowed faint blue. You got it? I asked. He nodded. Everything. Every file. Sequence E's gone from the servers, but it's safe here. I looked at him, adrenaline still burning through me. Then we finish it. We take it to the feds tonight. He hesitated, staring down at the small drive in his palm. She made him from us, Hannah. I know. What if they treat him like evidence too? I met his gaze. Then we make sure they can't. We go public, interviews, documentation, the whole thing. We tell the truth before anyone else can twist it. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Then we tell it all. By dawn, the storm had broken. The city gleamed, clean and hollow, as if nothing had happened. Carter's car idled outside the hospital entrance. Inside, Ben sat buckled in the back seat, small hands clutching a juice box. He looked up as we approached and smiled faintly, tired but alive. Carter opened the passenger door. Ready? I took one last look at the hospital, at the building that had hidden so much, and nodded. Let's go. As we pulled into the grey morning traffic, the city swallowed us whole. The flash drive sat between us on the console, a tiny, pulsing heartbeat of truth. And for the first time, I realized the lullaby had changed meaning again. It wasn't about comfort or promise anymore. It was a warning, a song about what happens when we let silence grow too long. The morning after the storm, the city looked clean but restless, like it had been scrubbed too hard. The headlines were still glossy, the world still turning. But inside Bayview Children's, everyone moved with that brittle calm that only comes after something almost breaks. Carter and I hadn't gone home. We'd spent the night inside his car, parked near the piers, both running on caffeine and adrenaline. Between us sat the encrypted drive, the one piece of evidence that could destroy Helixin Biotech or save it, depending on who held it first. At 6:10 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a split second, I thought it was the same one that had texted me about storage room B2. Unknown. You have less than an hour before the board wipes Hale's credentials. After that, all internal logs vanish. Unknown. Choose wisely, Hannah. Once this goes public, there's no going back. I showed the message to Carter. He didn't even look surprised. She still has people, he said quietly. Half the board are loyal to her. They'll bury this, claim it's unauthorized genetic research from a rogue lab. You'll get blamed. So will I. I leaned back in the seat. So what's the play? He stared out the windshield for a moment, the early light catching on his profile. We go loud, public loud. I asked. He nodded. All of it, data, photos, test logs. If we give it to one outlet, they can suppress it. But if we give it to everyone at once, the press, regulators, Congress, they can't plug every hole. You're talking about a media leak. Whistleblower level? I'm talking about survival, he said. By 7:30, we were sitting in the glass atrium of the Chronicle's downtown office, waiting for a reporter who owed me a favor, Jenna Liu, an investigative journalist who'd once worked with me back when I still believed truth could outrun. Chi came in, wearing jeans and an oversized coffee in one hand. Her sharp eyes went straight to the flash drive sitting between us. Jesus, Hannah, she said. You look like someone who broke into the Pentagon. Close enough, I said. Tell me this isn't some half-baked expose. It's not half-baked, I said. It's cooked, burned, and still smoking. She arched an eyebrow, set down her coffee, and crossed her arms. Talk. Carter handled the introduction with the precision of someone used to high-stakes meetings. He laid out the timeline. Helixson's acquisition of the donor program, the Morning Seed project, Eleanor Hale's illegal genetic merging, and the cover-up that followed. Jenna didn't interrupt once. She just scribbled notes and occasionally glanced at the drive like it might detonate. When he finished, she let out a low whistle. You're telling me this kid, Ben, is the genetic fusion of the company's CEO and a former journalist/PR fixer? Unwillingly, I said. Neither of us knew until 48 hours ago. Damn, she said softly. Eleanor really outdid herself. She leaned forward. Look, if even half of what you're saying is on that drive, it's bigger than one company. You're talking human cloning, intellectual property violations, privacy law, child welfare, and corporate espionage rolled into one. Exactly, Carter said. That's why we can't trust one regulator or one newsroom. We release it all, simultaneously. You and whoever you trust handle the press side. I'll deliver the same files to the FDA, the DOJ, and the European Commission. Jenna stared at him, measuring the risk. You realize this ends your career. He didn't flinch. Then it ends clean. She turned to me. And you're in this too deep. Once your name's attached to Morning Seed, you're either the whistleblower who stopped it, or the woman who helped make it. I met her gaze. Then I'd rather be the first. She nodded slowly. Okay, send me everything. Carter handed her the duplicate drive. She tucked it into her bag, looked at both of us, and said, You've got until noon before the lawyers wake up. After that, this thing starts moving on its own. By the time we left the Chronicle building, the sky had cleared completely. We stopped at a small cafe near Market Street for breakfast neither of us could eat. Carter sat across from me, stirring his coffee in tight circles, his shoulders tense but still. You know what I keep thinking about? He said. She didn't just build an empire on stolen genes. She built me. She built him. Then you're the one who gets to end it, I said. That's the point. He nodded, but didn't smile. You ever wonder if we did the right thing? Uploading it all. Once this hits, there's no protecting Ben's privacy. Every reporter in the country will want his face, his story. I hesitated. I've thought about it. but keeping him hidden just repeats her cycle. Secrets are what made this possible. Sunlight's the only way to burn it out. Carter finally looked up, and for the first time, there was something like peace in his eyes. "You sound like a journalist again," he said. "Don't get used to it," I said. "I've learned better than to trust headlines." He smiled faintly. "For what it's worth, I don't think she ever expected anyone to fight her this way. Then she underestimated her own creations." I said, "The first alert hit my phone at 12:03 p.m. Breaking: Helixin Biotech under federal investigation for illegal genetic engineering program. Leaked documents suggest use of human donor material without consent." Within minutes, my inbox exploded. The world had cracked open, and Helixin's name was at the center of the fault line. Jenna's article was everywhere, replicated across news feeds, mirrored by watchdogs, dissected by science bloggers before lunch. She'd done what we'd asked, redacted identifying data, blurred Ben's image, but left enough to prove the truth. By 2 p.m., federal agents had sealed Helixin's headquarters. The board issued a public statement suspending operations pending review. Eleanor's arrest had gone from rumor to confirmed fact, and then, inevitably, the reporters came for us, that night. Carter and I stood outside Bayview Hospital again. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, cameras, microphones, the neon buzz of satellite vans. Someone shouted, "Ms. Reed, Mr. Hale, is it true you're both the boys' biological parents?" The question hung in the cold evening air. Carter didn't answer. He just put a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Let's get him out of here." We slipped through a side entrance, down a quieter hallway where the noise couldn't reach. Ben was waiting in the family room, coloring with Alyssa at a low table. He looked up when he saw us, his small hand waving the crayon like a flag. I knelt beside him. "Hey, champ. Big day, huh?" He looked confused, but calm. He pointed to the window. "Loud," he said, one of the few words he'd started using in the last week. "Yeah," I said. "Loud. But it's going to get quiet again soon." Carter crouched next to him, his expression softening in a way I'd never seen before. "You ready to go for a ride, Ben?" The boy nodded, clutching his stuffed animal. Alyssa handed me a small envelope. "Temporary foster paperwork," she said, "until the court figures out custody. I told them you were the safest placement." "Thank you," I whispered. She smiled. "He trusts you. That's more than most adults in this building can say about anyone right now." We left through the back door, avoiding the cameras. The air smelled of rain again, but the sky was clear. Carter opened the car door, and Ben climbed in, humming softly to himself. The sound was familiar now, not the same melody as before, but a variation, the way children reinvent things they love. As the car started, I glanced back. Ben met my eyes and smiled, small, knowing, and in that instant, the enormity of what had happened finally hit me. He wasn't a secret anymore. He wasn't an experiment. He was real. Carter looked over from the driver's seat. "So where do we go?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere the world can't find us for a while." He nodded. "I know a place in Mendocino. My father used to take me there when I was little." I looked out the window as the hospital lights faded behind us. Perfect. By the time we reached the Golden Gate Bridge, night had fallen completely. The city shimmered behind us, still alive, still loud. But ahead, the coast stretched dark and endless, a promise of somewhere new. Ben was asleep in the back seat, the scarf draped across his lap like a small banner of peace. Carter's hand rested on the steering wheel, steady, sure. He glanced at me. "You ever think about what comes next?" I smiled faintly. "For once, no, I think we just drive." The bridge lights streaked gold through the windows. The storm was gone. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like danger. It felt like beginning. The road to Mendocino wound like a ribbon through the redwoods. The morning sun slipped between tall trunks, scattering gold on the windshield. The rain had washed everything clean. The air smelled of pine, salt, and new chances. Ben stirred in the back seat, the scarf still bundled in his small hands. He blinked at the trees and let out a little hum, soft and sleepy. A tune that sounded halfway between the lullaby and something brand new. Carter glanced at me and smiled faintly. "He's already rewriting it." "Good," I said. "Maybe his version will end better than ours did." "Maybe it's just starting," he said quietly. The house sat on a bluff overlooking the ocean, a weathered, two-story cabin with peeling paint and a porch that faced west. It belonged to Carter's late father, untouched for years. The sea crashed against the rocks below, steady and certain, like it had been waiting for us. We didn't unpack right away. We just stood on the porch for a long moment, breathing in the salt air, listening to the rhythm of the waves and the faint hum of Ben's voice behind us. For the first time in days, I wasn't running toward or away from anything. I was just here. Over the next few days, life slowed down in a way I didn't think possible. No alarms, no cameras, no lawyers, just the three of us, figuring out what normal meant in the aftermath of chaos. Ben spent most of his mornings exploring the yard, chasing gulls with a stick like a knight on a quest. In the afternoons, he'd sit with me at the kitchen table, drawing endless spirals on scrap paper. Sometimes he'd hum while he worked, little variations of the lullaby. Each one softer and lighter. Carter handled the practical things, calls with his lawyers, interviews with the investigators. The federal case had exploded wider than either of us imagined. Eleanor Hale had been formally indicted on charges of human experimentation, data fraud, and bioethics violations. The board of Helixon disbanded within a week, and Carter, after testifying, resigned publicly. The press called him the CEO who exposed his own empire. They called me the journalist who broke the silence, but we both stopped reading the headlines after a while, because every story, no matter how accurate, still made Ben sound like a miracle that belonged to someone else, a discovery, not a child, and that wasn't what he needed. What he needed was breakfast and bedtime stories and safety. On the fifth night, Carter found me sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the dark line of the ocean. He brought 2 mugs of tea and sat beside me. The air was cool and sweet. "FBI called again," he said. "They confirmed the data from the drive. Every sequence, every donor file. They're building a task force around it now. So it's real," I said. "All of it. It was always real." He took a sip. "They're going to need us again. Witness statements, follow-ups, hearings." I nodded. "We'll go. When it's time." He looked at me for a long moment. "You're handling this better than I expected." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just pretending until it feels true." He laughed softly. "That's what I've been doing my whole life." We sat in silence for a while. The wind rustled through the grass. The ocean kept breathing. "You know," he said finally, "my mother used to tell me she built me because she wanted to make something that lasted. She thought if she controlled every detail, she could make perfection. But I think what she really wanted was to never lose anything again. And you?" I asked. He looked out at the horizon. "I just want to learn how to let things live." I reached over and placed my hand on his. "Then start here." Later that night, when the house was quiet, I checked on Ben. He was curled under a quilt, one hand still clutching the scarf, the other resting on a small stuffed bear Carter had bought him at a gas station on the way up. His breathing was steady, peaceful. I brushed his hair back and whispered, "You're safe now." He stirred, eyes blinking open just long enough to mumble, "Night." "Mum." The word hit me like sunlight through glass. I froze, not sure if he'd meant it, or if it was just the first word that came to him. But then he smiled, soft and half asleep, and I realized it didn't matter. Mum, not donor, not subject. Mum. I sat there until his breathing deepened again. Tears warm on my cheeks, the sound of waves folding into his little hum in the morning. The world was quiet again. The storm, the city, the cameras, all of it felt like a different lifetime. Carter was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes with a ridiculous amount of focus. Ben sat on the counter, grinning as he sprinkled blueberries into the batter. "2 more, champ," Carter said. "Then we eat." 3, Ben counted, holding up tiny fingers. 2.5, Carter bargained. "Deal," Ben said. Solemn and satisfied, I leaned against the doorway, watching them, the man who'd spent his life building empires, learning how to make breakfast, and the boy who'd been born out of secrecy, learning how to laugh. For a moment, everything was still, perfect in its imperfection. Carter noticed me and smiled. "You look like you're finally breathing again." "I think I am." "Good," he said, "because we have a long drive ahead of us next week." "Where to?" "Washington. The hearing. They want us to testify before the ethics committee." "Of course they do," I said, but smiled anyway. Guess the quiet couldn't last forever. "Nothing good ever does," he said, "but that's what makes it worth finding again." We ate breakfast together, pancakes too sweet, syrup everywhere, laughter echoing through the old kitchen. Later, when the dishes were done, Ben tugged at my sleeve and handed me a piece of paper covered in spirals. It wasn't just doodles this time. In the center, he'd drawn 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, all holding hands under a crooked sun. "Us," he said proudly. My throat tightened. "Yeah," I whispered, "us." That evening, as the sun sank into the ocean, we walked down to the beach. Ben ran ahead, chasing gulls, footprints disappearing in the wet sand. Carter stood beside me, hands in his pockets, face turned toward the wind. "After everything," he said softly, "do you still believe in happy endings?" I watched Ben spin in circles, laughing as the waves chased him. "No," I said, "but I believe in new beginnings." He smiled. "That's better." The sky blazed gold, then pink, then dark. The 3 of us walked back toward the cabin, the sound of the ocean behind us like a heartbeat, steady, alive, infinite, and somewhere between the waves and the wind, Ben's little voice began to hum the lullaby again. This time, we both joined in, no longer as a promise to survive, but as a song for what comes after.